Your kitchen barely fits you and an open oven door, a short run of worktop, a fridge blocking a cupboard, and a sink so awkward you wash up standing at an angle. Meanwhile, your living room could comfortably host a dinner party. This is not bad luck. British builders have been producing kitchens this small for over 150 years, and the reason goes far deeper than simple bad design. Step through the front door of a Victorian terraced house, and the logic of the layout becomes clear if you know where to look. The largest, brightest room sits at the front, dressed up as a parlour with its fireplace, patterned tiles, and best chairs. This was the stage for respectability, a place to impress visitors or mark out a family's social standing, even in the humblest artisan terraces. The kitchen, though, is nowhere to be seen from the street. Tucked at the back or sometimes down a few steps into a dim basement, it was deliberately hidden from view. For most families, the kitchen was a cramped, hard-working space. In a typical working-class terrace, the kitchen might be just 10 by 12 feet, barely enough for a range, a table, and the endless churn of laundry and meals. It doubled as a washroom, a scullery, a drying space, and sometimes even a bedroom in overcrowded homes. If the family had a servant, she slipped in and out by the back, using narrow stairs or a side passage, making sure her labour remained invisible. The logic was as much about social boundaries as physical ones. Cooking smells, noise, and signs of hard work were meant to stay out of sight. The kitchen became a kind of backstage, essential but never part of the show. Even the smallest houses copied this pattern, squeezing the kitchen into the leftovers of the plot so the parlour could always face the world. What started as a marker of Victorian social order became a template for generations, setting the footprint for the kitchens that frustrate so many today. After the war, the challenge was no longer just hiding the kitchen from polite society. It was about building homes fast and for everyone. The scale of the housing shortage was staggering. By 1945, Britain faced a deficit of more than 4 million homes. The government's answer was speed and efficiency, which meant new rules and often new compromises. Prefabricated houses, the famous post-war prefabs, went up by the tens of thousands. Each one measured just 57 square metres in total, and every inch had to count. In these homes, the kitchen became a compact, functional zone, just enough room for a cooker, a sink, and the bare minimum of storage. Official guidance set a standard of 2.3 cubic metres of enclosed storage for a family of 3 or more, sometimes squeezed into kitchens as small as 5.5 to 9 square metres. The Dudley Report of 1944, followed by the 1949 Housing Manual, set the tone. These documents did not just recommend small kitchens, they made them the norm, framing tight dimensions as a mark of rational planning. The Parker-Morris standards of the 1960s nudged things forward, but even then the focus stayed on efficiency, with kitchens measured by how much essential equipment could fit, not by how many people might want to gather round a table. For many families, the kitchen was still seen as a workroom, not a place to linger. The result was clear. Small kitchens were not just a legacy of old-fashioned taste, they were locked in by policy, written into the blueprints of millions of British homes. Over time, these minimum standards became the baseline, shaping what people expected and what they settled for when it came to the heart of the house. In many parts of Europe, the kitchen is the heart of the home. Step into a flat in Barcelona, a farmhouse in Tuscany, or a Parisian apartment, and you will find the kitchen alive with conversation, food, and family. Meals are prepared and eaten together. Friends gather round the table, and the space is designed for company as much as for cooking. In France, Italy, and Spain, it is common for the kitchen to double as a dining room, with a generous table at the centre and enough elbow room for several cooks. Even modest homes make space for a kitchen that welcomes people in, not just food out. British homes, though, tell a different story. For generations, the kitchen was where work happened, quietly, and often alone. The main gathering took place in the front room or the dining room, away from the clatter of pots and the smell of onions frying. Even in the 1950s and the 60s, dinner was served in the living room or at a separate dining table, sometimes with the television on. The kitchen stayed in the background, a place to get things done and move on. This difference was not just about money or space, it was about what counted as family time and where it belonged. In much of continental Europe, the kitchen was the stage for daily life. In Britain, it was more like the wings, important, but not for show. That meant few people asked for bigger kitchens, and builders rarely offered them. The market did not see a need, so the pattern held. British kitchens stayed small, not because nobody wanted to cook, but because the culture pointed life elsewhere. That quiet preference, repeated over decades, helped cement the kitchen's modest footprint in British homes. Walk through the back of almost any Victorian or Edwardian terrace, and you are met with a physical reality that is hard to ignore. The plot itself draws the boundaries, a narrow strip of land, often just 4 to 5 metres wide, at the rear wall. That is the entire internal width you have to play with. There is barely enough for a galley kitchen, let alone a family-sized space. Builders did not have the luxury of pushing walls out sideways. Shared party walls with neighbours on both sides made expansion impossible. Even today, those original plots lock the shape of the house in place. The result is a kitchen that runs along the back of the house, squeezed between 2 brick boundaries. Appliances line up in a single file: fridge, cooker, sink. Each fights for elbow room. Try to fit a table in, and suddenly the space for moving, cooking, or even opening a cupboard door disappears. In many terraces, the internal rear wall span has stayed stubbornly close to that original 4 or 5 metres, a measurement dictated by the plot, not by anyone's vision for a dream kitchen. This is not just a quirk of old design, it is a constraint baked into the bones of British housing. Before anyone even considers planning rules or modern developer choices, the geometry of the plot has already set the limits. The galley kitchen is not a style, it is a physical necessity. And for anyone hoping to break out of that narrow footprint, the only way is out the back, into the garden. That brings its own set of hurdles. Anyone hoping to carve out more kitchen space in a typical British terrace soon runs into a wall. The planning system. Even when the garden offers room to expand, strict rules shape what is possible. For most terraced and semi-detached houses, the law sets a hard limit. A rear extension can project no more than 3 metres from the original back wall without special permission. Go beyond that and you will need to apply for prior approval, which means notifying your neighbours and giving them a formal window to object. Height is capped too. Single-storey extensions cannot rise above 4 metres, and eaves must usually match the existing house. These limits are not just about paperwork, they are designed to stop new builds from blocking light or crowding the view from next door. But there is more. If your plans touch a shared party wall, the Party Wall Act kicks in, requiring you to serve notice and often pay for a surveyor, costs that can easily run into thousands. Add it up, and many homeowners decide it is not worth pushing the boundaries. Instead, they settle for a modest bump out, just enough to squeeze in a breakfast table or an extra row of cupboards. The rules, costs, and neighbourly diplomacy all nudge people towards small, predictable solutions. The result: even when ambition runs high, most kitchen extensions end up only slightly less cramped than the originals. Open the brochure for almost any new build estate, and a familiar pattern jumps out. 3 bedrooms, a generous lounge, and a kitchen that feels like an afterthought, often squeezed into less than 8 square metres. The logic is simple and relentless. Developers price homes by the number of bedrooms, not by the size of the kitchen. A 3rd or 4th bedroom adds tens of thousands to the sale price. while a bigger kitchen barely moves the needle. So kitchens stay small, even in houses that seem spacious elsewhere. For buyers, the solution is almost ritual. A rear extension, usually flat-roofed, eating into the garden to create a kitchen diner. It's a trade-off. Outdoor space for a room that finally fits the way people want to live. Across the country, satellite images show a patchwork of boxy add-ons, each one a quiet rebellion against the original blueprint. In some streets, nearly half the homes have stretched out the back wall, swapping lawn for light and elbow room. The kitchen, once a leftover, becomes the heart of the house, by homeowner choice, not by the builder's plan. So every time you squeeze past a cupboard, or juggle pans on a postage stamp counter, remember, these kitchens aren't just quirky design features, they are living relics of how Britain once saw home life. And as our habits change, the walls still quietly tell an older story. What's your kitchen story?